Ready for a little true or false quiz? Here we go. True or false? Dietary supplements are regulated. True or false? Everyone should take branched-chain amino acids. And last one, true or false? Eating 30 to 60 minutes after exercise is the ideal time to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. How'd you do? If you're feeling a little unsure about the answers, don't worry. You're not alone. Most of us didn't learn this in school. I'm Colleen Sloan, a PA, dietitian, and your nutrition mentor. Welcome to the Exam Room Nutrition Podcast, your guide to giving better nutrition advice. In today's episode, we unpack everything you need to know about dietary supplements. Think regulation, quality assurance, and how to decide whether the trendy pills and powders should make it into your patient recommendations. Plus, you'll learn 3 super easy at-home tests to determine if you bought a quality supplement or if you just got duped. I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Douglas Kalman. He is a clinical associate professor in the College of Osteopathic Medicine at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's also the co-founder and co-director of Substantiation Sciences, a strategic nutrition business consultancy, and the co-founder of the International Society of Sports Nutrition, or ISSN. Most recently, Dr. Kalman served as the Senior Vice President of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs for the Natural Products Association. He has authored hundreds of peer-reviewed manuscripts and abstracts, worked 6 Olympic Games, and is your go-to guy when it comes to supplements and regulation. You're about to get a crash course in supplements like never before. So grab your headphones, get comfortable, and enjoy my conversation with Dr. Kalman. Well, Dr. Kalman, it is such a treat to finally meet you face to face. Thank you so much for the gift of your time and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Colleen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. I love listening to your podcast. I love reading your posts on LinkedIn. I think that you have a unique viewpoint as both a physician's assistant in pediatrics and as a registered dietitian about things that as RDs, because you work more frontline healthcare, that we don't see, but you get on a daily basis, questions and observations. And then how does what one learns in training then translate to real life? And I'm thankful for your podcast because it gives us a unique insight into aspects of real world medicine and healthcare and public health too, in a way.
Well, thank you. And it's so funny because you'd think that these questions should be directed towards the dietitian, but they're actually being asked to the primary care, the pediatrician. So that's really been a fun way to merge the two and just get an inside look into what's going on in the clinic and behind exam room doors. First off, I wanted to bring up a topic that comes up often, and it's around nutrient timing. And if you could explain what that is and who should actually be focused on this and worried about the timing of when they're eating their foods.
The concept of nutrient timing can be thought of as, does what you eat and when you eat impact your training or exercise performance? And how does timing of what you eat and when you eat impact recovery from that training or performance? Before we get into the nuances of nutrient timing, I think we have to understand that, yes, we know from exercise physiology and sport nutrition related research that, for example, if you're going to do an endurance sport, you're better off having a diet that's higher in carbohydrates so that your muscles and liver store a little bit more carbohydrates than normal because most of your energy metabolic systems are powered by glycolytic pathways, not beta oxidation or fat burning pathways. And so therefore, we're better off having a good gas tank and being ready to go. And then after training or after performance, is there a specific window, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 120 minutes, meaning 2 hours? But one of the reasons I'm not getting yet specific on a time for nutrient timing is that if an athlete is not hydrating enough and eating enough calories adequately over the 24-hour period anyway, it doesn't matter if they time their post-exercise meal just right, because they're going to be catabolic over the period anyway, because they're not meeting their energy needs. So big picture to me is more important to talk about. But understanding that after you exercise or train, and that training session is at least an hour, hour 15 or longer, not a 30-minute Zumba class, right? That's a workout. That's not a training session. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's good for cardiovascular fitness, but you don't really have a greater nutritional need after a 30-minute workout. But going back to this is there's also a point of diminishing returns in the after exercise period, where if you don't eat soon enough, then the catabolic systems that are going on post-exercise are going to overrule any of the anabolic processes that are stimulated by the exercise stimulus. So when we exercise, we stimulate muscle protein synthesis, right? But we also stimulate muscle protein breakdown. What helps slow down that muscle protein breakdown is post-training nutrition, including carbohydrates, proteins, hydration, so forth. And if you go longer than about 4 hours after a training session and have not hydrated and refueled to some degree, you wasted that training session. Now, over a 24-hour period, your total calories matter, carbs, protein, yes. But typically, in an athletic world, we're promoting start hydration as soon as you come off the mat or come off the track, whatever your thing is. And then it's about understanding their lifestyle too. So I usually say within an hour of getting done with your shower and hydrating, let's get some food into you. So when we're talking about nutrient timing on an individual level, for that athlete that doesn't really like stuff in their stomach, we try to make sure that for the 3 days leading up, that we are having a greater amount of carbohydrates. And then on the last night before an event, that we're topping off the fuel as much as possible. So eating matters. When you eat, not so much. But after exercise within 4 hours, if you're looking for a window, which people, Dr. Sean Arendt, a brilliant professor at University of South Carolina, used to say, there's not a window of opportunity. It's a garage door of opportunity. There's no such magic thing that happens in between 30 and 60 minutes where your body shuts down if you didn't have a carb protein drink or a protein drink or a piece of chicken and rice or something. So it's more of a garage door. And so we say we push the first 4 hours is really important. Hope that helps answer. One other thing, if I could mention, I've had the honor of being one of the co-founders of the International Society of Sport Nutrition. And the ISSN, as a nonprofit academic-oriented society dedicated to sport nutrition, has a peer-reviewed PubMed Index journal, the Journal of the International Society of Sport Nutrition, and of course, continuing education conferences and so forth. I mention this because the ISSN has published a number of position stands, and amongst these position stands, the topic of nutrient timing is discussed. So I'll be able to share with you the web link to the collection, and then therefore the readers that want to download position stands on anything sport nutrition, tactical nutrition. We have 20 something of them.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually refer to those often. The position statements are so helpful because they kind of tell you what you need to know. They're really, really good. So I will for sure link those down in the show notes, and they're free access, right?
Yes, they're open access and free access.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. Okay. I love your analogy of the window versus the garage door, because as you were talking, I was just thinking that so many people get myopic or nearsighted with their nutrition that they just think like, oh, I have to get something in right now. Like magically, if I eat in 2 hours, it's not going to fuel my body properly. Just before we aired, we had joked that, are we talking about like a CrossFit athlete or a D1, college athlete? Or are we talking about your, 40-year-old that plays weekend dodgeball, right? So they all fall under the athlete, quote, term, but their nutrition will be different. So I always recommend you guys have a dietitian that you can bounce ideas off of or just refer your patients to. All right. So I want to move into really your wheelhouse and where you're so well educated on and you can really clear things up for us. And that is the topic of supplements. And it's a big topic, but I wanted to first start by asking if supplements are regulated and how we can explain to our patients what they should look for to know they have a, quote, quality supplement.
Great question. So first off, are dietary supplements regulated? The answer is yes. Dietary supplements are regulated on the federal level, and I'll discuss which agencies regulate them, and on the state level. That means every state within the United States also has its state laws that companies have to adhere to. That's called regulations. Laws are regulations, right? So dietary supplements are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration as a subset of foods. In 1994, Congress passed the Dietary Supplement Health Education Act, and the president signed it into law. The regulations that were introduced and have been modernized over the past 30 years to various degrees, included the definition of what meets good manufacturing practices. So, for example, in the Code of Federal Regulations, which is the government's Bible for the rules and regulations of operations, is something called Part 111 for dietary supplements and Part 211 for pharmaceutical. And these are the good manufacturing practices. And so the FDA does a number of inspections for safety standards, health standards, and so forth. So they're regulated dietary supplements by the Food and Drug Administration for not only manufacturing, but what's also inside the bottle. And believe it or not, there are laws that even go down to how ingredients are sourced. So there are regulations called the Food Safety Modernization Act that there's a program under it, another regulation called the Food Safety Verification Program, that if you're a dietary supplement company and you import your ingredients from outside the USA, that's called importation, that then the companies that you wish to import for then have to become registered with the FDA under the FSMA and FSVP program and are also then can be inspected, because then they also have to be following our standards. So that's also regulations that reach outside of our borders for companies that are then importing, let's say, vitamin C from wherever. So dietary supplements are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. They are also enforced for regulations by Custom and Border Police for anything that's imported. So, for example, the Food and Drug Administration can put an import alert, meaning that they will not allow products from certain company to be into the U.S. by any of the ports where they come in. There's also, beyond the FDA, which has more than a handful of authorities over dietary supplements, and including aspects of marketing. Even though that the Federal Trade Commission, another federal agency, regulates marketing and advertising, FDA regulates what's inside the bottle. FDA regulates claims that are made on labels or websites or ads. FTC also regulates claims that are on product and marketing tactics. So, for example, by law, dietary supplements are not allowed to be marketed to treat, prevent, cure any disease or condition, right? Okay, unless they have some type of other FDA qualifier as a medical food, which would be separate than a dietary supplement. Medical foods have a nutrition facts panel. Dietary supplements have a supplement facts panel. That's an example of a regulation. You pick up a bottle of vitamins and it says supplement facts on it. That way you know it's a dietary supplement. That's part of the SHEA Act that was passed. And you pick up a food, it says nutrition facts. You pick up a drug, it says drug facts, right? So that is part of federal regulations. So dietary supplements are more regulated than foods. They're more regulated than medical devices. They're a little bit less regulated than prescription pharmaceuticals. They're more regulated than over-the-counter pharmaceuticals.
Talk to me about third-party testing, because especially for collegiate athletes, Olympic athletes, that is important to make sure there's no banned substances. So I'm curious, should everyone be taking third-party tested supplements? And then off air, we talked about sort of your tricks about knowing if it's a quality supplement or not. You had mentioned a few things. So I love for you to let my listeners know about that.
Sure. So first, let's talk about two different types of certifications, if you will, classes. One is a certification that the product meets label claim for the amount of A, B, C, D, E, and F in it, and that it's been verified for its identity. So that's like an example of a USP verified. All right, they verify the identity, they verify it's the product, they verify through testing. So that's an overall product. Then you have more specific kind of verification programs and service marks that you'll see on products. One is by NSF, certified for sport. The next one is informed choice. And then you also have the Banned Substance Control Group. All three of those are accepted by the World Anti-Doping Association as amongst the 5 certifying groups for dietary supplements that help with quality control and to prevent accidental cross-contamination. So when we're talking about certifications, all of them usually will say on it in some small print what it is. So for example, you also have the NSF that certifies manufacturing facilities as a certification that they are following the FDA good manufacturing practices, and this third-party audit proves it. So I look at, for people that either compete in some type of event where they're possibly going to be drug tested, to always look for any kind of dietary supplement, whether it's a multivitamin, a protein powder, which sometimes can have nutrition facts, so it's not a supplement, it's a food, but anything to be third-party certified for being free of banned substances. And I don't champion one group over the next. NSF, Informed Choice, Banned Substance Control Group. All three are good, okay? But when it comes to looking for certifications additional, there is a USP Verified is one that is very popular. ConsumerLabs.com, Dr. Ted Copperman, they also have a certification that they do for products to meet label claim. So I think listeners have choices. And I think even if I'm not drug tested, but I just want to make sure that the product I'm buying is what it says and that there's nothing extra that I don't really need, then I'm still looking for products that are certified. I think it is important. It's also an element of quality control because it also shows you that that company went one step beyond what is needed, beyond federal regulations, to additionally verify their product.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful for listeners to tell their patients to look for on whatever they're buying, because that brand will be very proud of the fact that they went one step ahead and got third-party certified or tested. So I think that's really helpful. Now, give us those quick little tips that you had mentioned off air about knowing sort of your own quality testing at home. You had mentioned the color of a capsule and kind of the smell of some fish oil. So I think that was actually quite interesting. So I'm sure my listeners would love to hear that home quality control test you can do.
Well, there's a few different home quality control tests you could do. Let's say that you decide that you want to buy a multivitamin that's in tablet form, specifically tablet form. One home science test that you can do is our stomachs have the pH and acid value of about 2. In most people's refrigerators or counters are vinegar. Vinegar has a pH of 2. You could take one tablet of your multivitamin, put it into 8 ounces of vinegar, put a timer on, and see how long it takes for that multivitamin to disintegrate. And the reason partially is that it will give you an illustration of if it's more than 20 minutes and it's still there in good form, your body's not going to really be absorbing much out of it, right? If it takes longer than 20 minutes, it's a tablet that doesn't disintegrate, that what comes in will eventually come out. You might not see it, but it'll come out.
Okay, my science nerds are going to love that. And if you have kids who need a science fair project, that sounds pretty awesome. Okay. What was the other one?
For anybody that's interested in protein powders, right? What I look for when I'm talking quality in this essence is how much gram of protein per dollar am I going to get? And the way I measure this is that if you look at a protein product and it says it's 25 grams of protein per serving, and then it says serving size is 40 grams. So if 25 of that is protein, 25 plus 15 now equals 40. What are those other 15 grams? 15 grams of what? And now if I'm trying to buy a protein product, I'm buying something that has protein, but 15 grams of what? So what I look for is where the serving size gram and the protein gram are kind of much closer. Then you're knowing that you're actually getting more protein per gram than less filler or less carbohydrate or less whatever that other 15 grams can be. So that's just a trick on looking at the label in order to decide how you're going to spend your money so you get more protein per dollar by understanding the protein portion and what is your total serving portion. The next one that I'll mention real quick, because I know that you made one of these faces when I said it, was that fish oil. One of the tricks of the trade, a negative trick of the trade, is to put lower quality omega-3 fatty acid products into black capsules, because the black will hide the odor and will hide the rancidity of it. So that says to me, one, don't buy fish oil omega-3 products that are in black capsules. They're being hidden for a reason. And then second, what you should all know is when you open a bottle of fish oil or omega-3 product, it should not smell like fish. You should not have any odor. If a product has an odor, return it to where you bought it. Okay. Something that has an odor that is a challenge for industry to overcome are multivitamin tablets. But one of the reasons that some of the multivitamin tablets, you open up the bottle and it's a very distinct smell, like bad wet leather that's been, I don't know, with the dog for 10 years, is because of the synthetic chemical version of vitamins that are being used versus the natural version of vitamins. So try to look for products that don't smell also on the vitamin side. One other tip. Typically, companies that have been around 20, 25 years or longer have quality products because otherwise they wouldn't last that long. It's another tip of looking for company. And then if you see some company you've never heard of and something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
It's a really good point. For the last 10 minutes, we're going to do sort of a speed conversation about some specific supplements that I had questions come into me in preparation for this episode. So I wanted your opinion on greens powders because this is super popular right now. I just would love to hear what your thoughts are. If a patient comes to their primary care provider and is like, I'm thinking about this greens powder, what do you think? How would we answer that question?
If I was that primary care person, I would ask them, what is your goal and why? And what do you think that you're going to benefit from it that you might not benefit from actually just eating, or take the word actually out, from eating green leafy vegetables or foods that have the same nutritional qualities? And, great time to refer to a registered dietitian that can help them translate marketing commercials into real world food advice, because food first is the philosophy. And a lot of these green products, unfortunately, become popular and then go away, and then come popular and then go away. They get reborn every couple of years under new different themes. Food science has actually gotten better with taste masking and helping botanicals that traditionally taste like dirt not to taste so much like dirt. Now, what I would advise them, food first, and not saying that they can't have a role in filling gaps, but you have to build your foundation first. And especially if this is a teenage athlete, an adolescent athlete, and they're asking about it, I try to appeal to their athletic senses. And no matter what sport you do, is you always learn foundation or your basics first, right? Your basics, how to dribble a basketball, your basics in baseball, how to turn hips when swinging, right? So I try to emphasize the importance of your nutrition is your foundation. Supplements are only meant to fill in the gaps or be bridges and or to be portable nutrition, but it's a food first approach.
I fully support that food first approach because so many athletes, my teenage patients will come to me and be like, oh, I'm thinking about taking, an energy drink, or, I heard caffeine is good and beneficial and help me get through my workouts. And I asked them, I'm like, well, you're probably just not eating enough. I bet if you just had a bagel before your workout, you would feel so much better. So oftentimes, if we can kind of back up a little bit and not immediately say like yes or no to the green supplement they're talking about, they probably just need to optimize the food that they're not eating right now. So I really love that approach. Okay, I wanted to ask you about a topic that so many people message me about, and this is branched chain amino acids or BCAAs. What are they? Because a lot of clinicians might not even know what they are, and they might be taking them blindly, or patients are just taking them because they heard on TikTok that it's helpful. And then who do you think should take them and why?
Well, great question. The branched chain amino acids are most popularly known as 3 different individual amino acids that, due to their chemical configuration, are branched. There's actually more than 3 branched chain amino acids among the 20, but these are the primary branched amino acids because they are solely metabolized in muscles, right? And these are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. These are our 3 branched chain amino acids that are primarily used for fuel in muscles as compared to glucose that can be used anywhere in the body, right? So branched chain amino acids play a role in muscle metabolism. More specifically, elegant research over the years by a variety of people, but mostly led by Dr. Robert Wolfe and Dr. Arnie Ferrando and Dr. Kevin Tipton, may Kevin rest in peace, have elegantly determined both how branched-chain amino acids, how essential amino acids, and how non-essential amino acids on their own affect muscle protein synthesis. And when it comes down to it, the only essential amino acid, which is a branched-chain amino acid that stimulates muscle protein synthesis to any significant degree, is leucine. So people have translated research that has looked at branched-chain amino acid supplementation and resulting changes in muscle protein synthesis as meaning that there's benefit to taking BCAAs after a workout to help further promote anabolic processes. Now, that is not necessarily flawed thinking. Doesn't mean it's the most correct in light of all of the evidence. But that's one of the reasons why branched-chain amino acids became popular, because research does show that to some degree, leucine on its own stimulates muscle protein synthesis. And that if you bought a product that just contained leucine, isoleucine, and valine, then you were getting more leucine than if you bought an essential amino acid product or a whole protein product like a whey protein. So that being said, there are some studies that show that in people that are calorie cutting and undergoing physical activity while calorie cutting, specifically these were wrestlers and combat athletes, that a certain dose of branched-chain amino acids, I think it was 10 grams a day of BCAA supplementation, preserved more muscle mass than the placebo group in these dieters undergoing physical activity. So there's been more than one study that shows that. So some people in the athletic world that are cutting weight will use it as a means of hopefully staving off muscle loss during being in weight cutting mode. Now, medically, there are some studies that have recently actually shown benefit for renal disease, which is kind of surprising, looking at BCAAs or essential amino acid formulas containing BCAAs on renal function in those people with disease requiring dialysis. Now, in the sporting world, people think that it's a way that's going to build you more muscle. And the problem that I have with this is that, yes, it can stimulate muscle protein synthesis to a small degree, but that same individual, if they were to drink a glass of milk or they were to drink even just a whey protein supplement, would get 4 times or more the amount of muscle protein synthesis response to the exercise than if you just had a BCAA product. To me, BCAAs in my sport nutrition coaching world really only have 2 uses. One, when an athlete's in like the last 2 weeks of camp and they're cutting weight, getting ready for weigh-ins and some type of combat sport, we use it for helping to reduce the amount of muscle loss. Studies also show that there's less DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, which DOMS is perceived. Your muscles, it's not like the enzymes that demonstrate muscle damage correlate with soreness scores. They don't, according to the research. And then the third reason is studies also show that when a person is drinking or hydrating, that they will drink more of a flavored drink than an unflavored drink. So most of these BCAAs are watermelon flavored or some type of, sweet flavored, but not sugar. So they get hydration, they get reduced DOMS, and they get maybe some muscle retention while they're cutting weight. That's the only times I use it with athletes. So for high school athletes, there's no need. Even if you're a high school wrestler, no need. Food first. Hydrate, food first. Understand where you get electrolytes. For example, coconut water. 8 ounces of coconut water has 3 times the amount of potassium as 1 banana. So why not rehydrate with potassium-rich coconut water? Fact is that about 67% of Americans don't get the 4,700 milligrams of potassium we're supposed to get through diet per day. But more than that, Americans get above the sodium recommendations per day. So we get too much sodium in our diet, not enough potassium. So there are ways that we can manipulate healthily by using foods to help offset this, which then will help with the athletic endeavor and recovery and performance and so forth.
That was such a helpful explanation, especially that last remark that you had talked about, the few indications that you would use a BCAA. And I promise you, it's probably not the patients that are coming into their PCP wanting to use it, probably the 40 to 45-year-old adult who's just looking to get back into shape. They could spend their money elsewhere. So I love that point. Okay, my final kind of rapid fire question is what supplements, if any, would you recommend all athletes take?
So in general, I think a good quality multivitamin, omega-3 fatty acids, so EPA and DHA as part of base, because unfortunately, most people don't get 2 or more servings of salmon per week. And there's cardiovascular prevention effects of omega-3 fatty acids. Most people live more of a pro-inflammatory lifestyle. Again, giving 3 out of every 4 people is overweight or obese. If we're talking general society, athletes generally aren't that, but some athletes are. So a multivitamin, fish oil, depending upon where you live, if you're north of Atlanta, maybe vitamin D, latitude-wise. South of Atlanta, probably not. And unfortunately, one other diet gap that I think could be addressed by supplements is the fiber gap. Recommendations are basically 25 grams a day for females and 37 for males. Most Americans get about 12 to 14 grams of fiber per day. So perhaps, Metamucil wafers as an example, but use a food first approach, the higher fiber cereals or some nutrition education with an RD about how to get some more fiber in through veggies.
I love that. And that was kind of a trick question because obviously nutrition is so nuanced, but I think that gives my listeners a lot of really helpful information. And then they can look at their patient in front of them and really decide what they may or may not need. And I love that you mentioned fiber because that is so big. Nobody's getting enough fiber these days. Dr. Kalman, if you can share with my listeners where they can connect with you, your social media, and just any other information you want my listeners to know.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much again, Colleen. I'm available, easier to find on LinkedIn or Twitter. So Twitter is Doug Kalman, PhD, RD. And LinkedIn, I believe, is Douglas Kalman, PhD, RD. And again, I thank you for allowing me to be part of your podcast today. It was a pleasure for me to learn so much from you.
Well, thank you. We learned so much from you. It was just such a joy having you on. I loved picking your brain today. I'm definitely going to link all of your resources and, of course, the ISSN position statements. I'll link to those down in the show notes. All right, now it's time for my nutrition notes. I really love how Dr. Kalman takes a food-first approach when it comes to nutrition education. I do that too. One of the final supplements he suggested that most people take is a fiber supplement, and I wanted to linger here a little bit. According to the USDA, 95% of Americans don't get enough fiber. So if there's one time I give you a universal recommendation, it's going to be now. So you don't need a nutrition degree to know that fiber comes from fruits and veggies, in the most basic sense. However, it's not enough to just tell our patients to eat more fruits and veggies. We've already done that, and obviously it's not working. But if you want to be known as a top-notch clinician, help your patient figure out how. How do they incorporate more fruits and veggies into their day? Now, I recently shared an article with my email subscribers that I wrote, which had 11 fun ways to add more fiber to your day. Which, by the way, if you don't get emails from me, you're missing out. It's totally free, and you can sign up at examroomnutrition.com/sign up. And I'll link to it down in the show notes. But I wanted to share a few suggestions that you can offer your patients today for ways to get in more fiber. First of all, they could try to top yogurt, cereal, or oatmeal with sliced fruit or frozen berries. They can even add diced apple chunks, pineapple, or grapes to tuna or chicken salad. One of my favorites is to add pureed fresh fruit to pancakes and waffles. Either mix it right in the batter or make it as a syrup. A super simple, foolproof way to get your patients to eat more veggies. Keep ready-to-eat veggies on hand. Think red, green, or yellow peppers, broccoli or cauliflower florets, carrots and celery sticks, cucumbers or snap peas. When they are accessible, people are more likely to eat it. You can even add grated, shredded, or chopped vegetables like zucchini, spinach, cauliflower, and carrots to pasta dishes, casseroles, soups, and stews. And lastly, my favorite, you can make fruit your dessert. You can top a banana with a scoop of low-fat frozen yogurt, sprinkle it with a tablespoon of chopped nuts, coconut, or peanut butter. Use one of these suggestions with your patient today instead of just saying, eat more fruits and veggies. I bet you they'll actually try it. Well, that's all I've got for you today, so thanks so much for listening, and as always, let's continue to make our patients healthier, one exam room at a time. I'll see you next week.